Welcome to our deep dive, into the Ghorman Massacre. Whether you're like a Padawan or a Jedi Master when it comes to Star Wars lore, this event is key, and Andor Season 2 is going to bring it to life in a whole new way. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, you might be wondering, what exactly was the Ghorman Massacre?
So in a nutshell, it was a brutal crackdown by the Empire on peaceful protests happening on the planet. Ghorman, we're talking, hundreds, maybe even thousands of civilian deaths. Not exactly the peace and security the Empire, promised, right?
Definitely not. And it's not just some random act of violence, either. This event sent shockwaves through the galaxy, especially for, those resisting Imperial rule. We're going to explore why it was such a turning point for the Rebel Alliance, how it impacted key players like Mon Mothma, and what we can expect to see when Andor Season 2 premieres.
Okay, so before we even get to the massacre itself, it's important to understand the context, right? The Empire wasn't exactly, winning any popularity contests at this point. Local militias and full-blown insurgencies were popping up all over the galaxy, pushing back against Imperial control.
So it's already getting pretty heated.
Exactly. And the Empire wasn't just sitting back and watching, ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau, was created to sniff out these rebel threats and crush them no matter the cost.
Kind of makes you wonder if the Empire's paranoia fueled the very rebellion they were trying to stop.
That's a great point. And there were certainly people within the Empire who saw the writing on the wall. Even within the Imperial Senate, some were secretly working to support, those struggling under Imperial rule.
Like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, right? Weren't they funneling resources to rebel cells even while serving in the Senate? Risky move?
Incredibly risky. They had to be incredibly careful. But they believed in fighting for what was right, even if it meant working from the inside. And remember those Ghorman debates we mentioned earlier? That's where Mon Mothma really put herself out there, publicly advocating for the people of Ghorman and demanding the Empire respect their rights.
Talk about taking a stand. So we've got this simmering pot of rebel activity in an increasingly iron-fisted empire. What was the spark that turned that tension into the Ghorman Massacre?
Well, there were a number of factors. The Ghorman Front, one of the early rebel groups, was making some noise, attracting the attention of the ISB. Remember, any sign of resistance was met with overwhelming force.
So basically, the Empire saw these peaceful protests on Ghorman as a threat they needed to eliminate.
Essentially, they wanted to make an example, to show what happens to those who dared to defy them.
And then the unthinkable happens. Peaceful protests turn into a bloodbath. What do we know about the massacre itself?
According to Imperial archives themselves, hundreds, if not thousands, were killed. It's a chilling testament to the Empire's brutality, and the chaos was so complete that many victims were never identified, leading to the creation of the Memorial to the Missing of Ghorman, a somber reminder of the lives lost and the families forever left wondering.
It's easy to get lost in the numbers, but each one represents a person, a story cut short by senseless violence. So the massacre happens. What was the immediate fallout? Did people just cower in fear, or...?
Quite the opposite. While it was a tragedy, Ghorman became a turning point. It ripped away any pretense that the Empire could be reasoned with. Think of Magva Yarrow, a protest survivor. Instead of being silenced, she joins the partisans ready to fight back.
Talk about turning grief into action.
And she wasn't alone. Senator Tina Pamlo, working with Rebel Alliance intelligence, received detailed reports on the massacre, further fueling their efforts. Even those within the Empire started to have second thoughts. We see this with Corey Selgrove, a journalist initially sympathetic to the Empire. The massacre shattered his illusions. He saw through the propaganda and eventually defected, becoming a prominent voice for the rebellion.
So you're saying Ghorman was less of a setback and more like a catalyst?
Exactly. It galvanized the opposition. And no one embodies this shift more than Mon Mothma. She went from carefully maneuvering within the Senate to straight up calling out Emperor Palpatine right on the Senate floor. Can you imagine the guts it took to brand him a lying executioner with the whole galaxy watching?
That's seriously bold. What was the reaction?
Well, you can guess. She was declared a traitor, stripped of her position, and forced to flee into exile. The Empire wanted her silenced permanently.
So she goes from senator to fugitive, all thanks to Ghorman. That's got to change a person.
It definitely lit a fire under the rebellion. Think about it. This respected senator, someone who tried to work within the system, is now branded an enemy just for speaking the truth. That's powerful.
And it makes you wonder, where does someone like Mon Mothma go from there?
That's where things get really interesting. Remember those scattered rebel cells we talked about? The ones getting funding from people like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa? Ghorman becomes the catalyst that brings them together.
So it's more than just inspiring individual acts of rebellion. It's about unifying the movement as a whole.
Precisely. Mon Mothma, on the run from the Empire, gets rescued in a daring operation involving the Spectres led by Hera Syndulla. Remember them from Rebels.
Oh yeah, they're a legendary crew. To think they played a role in all this, it really shows how interconnected the galaxy is.
Absolutely. And it adds another layer to Mon Mothma's story. She goes from hiding to leading a daring rescue mission, all fueled by the need to fight back against the Empire.
And I bet that rescue sets the stage for something even bigger.
You're right on target. It's what allows Mon Mothma to deliver the declaration of the Rebel Alliance. She brings together all these fragmented rebel cells and formally declares war on the Empire. It's a pivotal moment in galactic history, and her words, "This is our rebellion," echo through the entire saga.
Wow, so Ghorman goes from this horrific tragedy to the birth of a unified rebel alliance.
Yeah.
Talk about unintended consequences.
Exactly. Historian Beaumont Kin has written extensively about this, arguing that Ghorman was a colossal miscalculation for the Empire. It backfired spectacularly. Instead of crushing dissent, it fueled the flames of rebellion.
It's like they say sometimes trying to extinguish a fire just makes it burn hotter.
And for the Empire, Ghorman proved that peaceful opposition was no longer an option. It showed everyone the true face of their rule.
Okay, so Ghorman set the stage for the Rebel Alliance as we know it. But what about Andor Season 2? What are we hoping to see explored when it comes to this event?
Well, we know the Ghorman Massacre is going to be featured prominently spread across 5 whole episodes. Think about that, 5 episodes dedicated to a single event. It shows how vital it is to the overall narrative.
It's a huge chunk of the season, and Andor is known for its gritty realism and complex characters. I'm really curious to see how they depict the massacre itself, the immediate aftermath, and its impact on characters like Cassian Andor.
Tony Gilroy, the showrunner, has even said they're aiming to, straighten out the story of Ghorman and its place in Star Wars canon. I think we can expect a deep dive into the event, exploring different perspectives and adding layers of nuance that we haven't seen before.
It's going to be fascinating to see how this event shapes Cassian. In Season 1, he's drawn into the rebellion almost by accident, but after everything he's experienced, Ghorman could be the turning point that fully radicalizes him.
What's so compelling about Cassian is that he's not a Jedi, he's not a politician, he's an ordinary guy forced to make extraordinary choices in extraordinary times. His journey really highlights how events like Ghorman impact everyday people, pushing them towards rebellion.
And I bet Luthen Rael, the mastermind behind so much of the early rebellion, has a lot riding on Ghorman too. He's already playing a dangerous game, funding rebel cells, acquiring weapons. How do you think this changes his strategy?
Well, if you consider Luthen's character, he's a pragmatist. He understands that the Empire won't be defeated with half measures. Ghorman might push him towards even more daring and potentially ruthless strategies.
And then there's Saw Gerrera, the OG rebel extremist. He's already on the fringes of the movement, believing any means are justified to fight the Empire. How does Ghorman affect him?
That's the big question. Will this tragedy push Saw further down the path of violence and extremism? Or will it force him to find common ground with other rebel leaders in the face of this shared trauma?
You know, it's one thing to talk about the impact on those directly involved in the Ghorman Massacre, but I'm kind of curious about the ripple effects, across the wider Rebel Alliance. We know Mon Mothma is at the forefront, but she's not fighting this battle alone, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Ghorman could very well be the turning point that brings other familiar faces into the fold, people who go on to play major roles in the Galactic Civil War. Think about Bail Organa, for example. He was a senator representing Alderaan, but also secretly working to support Mon Mothma and other rebels.
Right, he was walking a tightrope even before Ghorman. I can't imagine how that event must have impacted him, knowing he was secretly involved in funding groups like the Ghorman Front.
His position would become even more precarious. He had to maintain this facade of loyalty to the Empire while secretly working to undermine it. Ghorman might have forced him to take even greater risks, pushing him further into the rebellion's inner circle.
Talk about a high-stakes game. And while we're on the topic of risky, we can't forget about Hera Syndulla and the Spectres. They were the ones who pulled off that daring rescue of Mon Mothma after she was declared a traitor.
Their involvement in Andor Season 2 would be a fantastic way to bridge the gap between this show and Rebels. Imagine seeing Hera Chopper and the crew in live action working alongside Cassian and Mon Mothma.
Now that would be epic. It'd be so cool to see their unique skills and perspectives come into play as the rebellion gains momentum.
What's really exciting is that Andor Season 2 could be the moment where the Rebel Alliance truly starts to take shape. It's a chance to see them evolve from this loose collection of cells and factions into a more organized and unified force.
And wouldn't you say that Ghorman is the catalyst that drives that transition? It forces those resisting the Empire to confront the brutality they're up against, the urgency of their mission, and the need to work together if they want to stand a chance.
Exactly. It highlights that even in a galaxy far, far away, movements for change don't happen overnight. They're built through struggle, sacrifice, and collaboration, often in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
It's sobering to think that sometimes it takes an event as horrific as the Ghorman Massacre to truly galvanize people, to push them to action, to make them realize they can't simply stand by and watch as injustice prevails.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, even when all hope seems lost, there will always be those who rise up and fight for a better future.
And those are the stories that, at its heart, Star Wars tells best. Stories about hope, about resilience, about the power of ordinary people to challenge tyranny no matter the odds.
I have a feeling Andor Season 2 is going to be a masterclass in storytelling. It's going to take us deep into the heart of the rebellion, showing us the harsh realities they face, the moral compromises they make, and the immense courage it takes to stand up for what you believe in.
This deep dive into the Ghorman Massacre has been eye-opening. It's given me a whole new perspective on this event and how it ripples through the Star Wars galaxy. I'm even more excited for Andor Season 2, now knowing the depth and complexity it's likely to explore.
It underscores that even in a galaxy far, far away, history is shaped by individuals, by their choices, by their actions, both big and small. And as we get ready to see the Ghorman Massacre brought to life on screen, it makes you wonder, what choices would we make if faced with such injustice? What sacrifices would we be willing to bear in the fight for freedom? It's a question worth pondering, even if our own battles are fought on a much smaller scale.
Powerful words to end on. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and may the Force be with you.